I love what I'm doing right now. So I don't think we always have to be hugely growing. I have been leading these executive learning trips now every 6 months since the world opened back up again. I would love to continue to do that. Mr. Yoshino is 81. And so we get so much joy in collaborating, and who knows how long that will be able to last. And it's been fantastic. So where I'd really like to see is get this next resource book, whatever I don't know totally what it's going to look like, out and continue to just grow my impact, but not in a...
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Rexhen, and today's guest is Katie Anderson, an internationally recognized keynote speaker, award-winning author, and leadership consultant who empowers leaders to build thriving, people-centered cultures of learning and excellence. As the founder of Katie Anderson Consulting and the host of Chain of Learning podcast, Katie works with executives, change leaders, and lean practitioners around the globe to strengthen leadership capabilities, embed continuous improvement, and drive sustainable results. And it's a pleasure for me to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Oh, thanks, Rexhen. I'm looking forward to having the conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. So I want to understand when it comes to your coaching business and how it got started. It's been around for almost 13 years now. So first of all, what inspired you to become a coach and then have your own coaching business started?
Yeah, so I think sometimes things happen, or I know things happen. Sometimes there's a lot of planning and sometimes the unexpected. So I actually have a totally first separate career in health policy and in academia, and really looking into how do we solve the big problems in the world, and really found my calling when I transitioned into continuous improvement and operational excellence roles in hospitals and healthcare systems. And I found that my passion was not just me leading the change or doing the project, but helping equip and inspire and enable leaders at all levels to lead their teams to solve the important problems. And that was really where I became so passionate about coaching and consulting, doing the consulting, but from enabling others to take on the projects and initiatives and change that they needed to lead for their teams and in their organizations. And so that really became the focus of my internal work when I was employed by other organizations, and truly my passion. And then, as you mentioned, almost 13 years ago, I had a few circumstances in my life that led me to say, you know what, I am ready to have a bigger impact and to jump out onto my own. And I never thought about myself becoming a business owner. I never thought I was ready. But it just sort of a few factors in my life sort of coalesced to that moment, and I decided to make the leap. And I'm so grateful that I did. I sort of leapt into the unknown. And before my last day of work, I actually had contracts in place or under negotiation with people in my network who were like, oh, we can now work with you and hire you in a different way. And so that was the beginning. And it's really evolved. And I feel like I've had many different steps, which we could potentially explore here as in the evolution of my coaching and consulting practice. But I love it. I work with leaders around the world, focusing on how to really build these high-performing teams through focusing on people and learning.
Interesting. So first you started with a few contracts and you worked with a few leaders, and then when did it actually, so was it full-time from the start? Basically, you left your career and moved full-time and focusing on this with even the few contracts that you had initially?
Right. So at first in my work, so I left my full-time job. So it wasn't like I was doing consulting while working at the same time. Although I believe it's really important, no matter where you are in your career, to always be doing things that build your reputation. Maybe if you're employed by an organization, that are still serving your organization, speaking at conferences, getting to be known for something, sharing thoughts, so that, you're positioned then well for building a reputation outside of your business as well. And so that really was foundational. I was doing things for my organizations, and it had built a reputation for myself. So my first roles as an independent consultant were really contract-based. And I was great. I was actually pregnant with my second child at the time. So lots of things happening. And it was awesome because I was able to control my schedule in a way that I wasn't as easily able to pre-pandemic days. This is 13 years ago, and it was really exciting. I love being able to do the work in a different capacity and work with different organizations. And then serendipity happened that my husband had an opportunity for us as a family for his job to move to Japan, and that was just it was not related to my own coaching consulting practice, but deeply related in terms of what I do. So much of what I lead in organizations is grounded in the Toyota production system, what people call lean manufacturing or lean leadership. And so the opportunity to go immerse myself into the birthplace of the Toyota production system was just an incredible gift and opportunity. And I really seized that by the horns. I started learning Japanese. I made as many connections as I could. I went out to see and learn. And I also wanted to share that with other people. And so that was a time where I started writing a blog, because back in the day, we didn't do as much here on LinkedIn or videos or podcasts. So I was writing a blog, sharing what I was learning. And through that, I learned for myself, but also created a lot of other connections. And then when I returned to the US, I built up a greater network, and it just sort of accelerated the impact of my consulting and my coaching even further.
Cool. And so while you were in Japan, you did mention Toyota. Did you make a contract with them initially, or do you now have contracts with
Yeah.
Japan?
Right. So, well, not so much a contract with Toyota, but I befriended a 40-year Toyota leader named Isao Yoshino. And in July of 2020, I published a book really honoring his 40 years of memories and stories at Toyota called Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. And it's received many awards, including the Shingo Publication Award, which is a very prestigious award in the lean and continuous improvement space. And so I got to deeply learn from this Toyota leader. And I now lead executive learning trips. This is a big part of my coaching and consulting practice. I lead these programs, these immersive learning experiences to Japan for executives and leaders around the world to go really understand and experience the Toyota production system, the heart of lean, and so much more in Japan. So I do that twice a year now, which I love. So I get to go back to my favorite city in the world, Tokyo, and bring people along on this really special and truly transformational learning experience.
Oh, wow. I'm getting to do that twice a year.
Yeah, it's good. Right. So I've been able to create work that not only is meaningful for others, but is also meaningful, lights my fire in me, my passion.
So interesting. And so lucky to be able to do that. And for many coaches, actually, it's just like doing the coaching. In your case, it's not just coaching. Coaching as kind of like a career, a pathway has been great for many coaches because they get to do this kind of work without having to be in the office all the time, which in a way used to be coaching a few years ago. You would actually meet people in person before
Yes.
COVID and before Zoom were a thing.
And I still love the opportunity to be in person and go see people in their work environment. We can do so much more remotely as well. So it's enabled me to work with the clients around the world and still have that coaching impact. And with the way I see coaching, even my consulting, I have it from a sort of more of a coaching lens. How am I their trusted advisor, their guide, their coach, whether or not I'm facilitating a leadership retreat or coaching one-on-one? It's about how am I helping them develop the skills and lead the change that they need to versus me coming in and doing that. So even my consulting work comes from sort of a coaching transfer of knowledge and capability ethos.
Interesting. So when we think about the leaders that you work with, and we were talking a little bit about them in the intro as well, how would you describe that ideal client profile? And actually, before we get to this question, what percentage of your business would you say is coaching and what percentage of it would be consulting?
Yeah, so it runs, at any one time, it can really fluctuate and vary. The 3 or 4 main areas of what I do are like transformational learning experiences, which I include my Japan experience or doing like a leadership retreat, my keynote speaking, and then working with either teams or individuals from that coaching advisory capacity. So those are sort of the main buckets of the work. And sometimes I have a lot more of I'm helping internal change teams really up level their skills and capabilities and maybe working with the executive of that or the team leader of that internal change group as well as a trusted advisor. Right now, I actually have less of that, and I'm doing more of the learning experiences and leadership retreats and keynote speaking. So, but it really could vary if you look across the year. So, I just love working with people and helping them have those transformational learning moments in whatever capacity it is.
And so, okay, good. And going back to like the ideal client profile, how would you describe that? Is there like an industry specific, or is there like a demographic, psychographic? Do they have some common goals or other things
Yeah.
like that?
So I'm sort of at this point industry agnostic, even though I came up through healthcare. I work with all industries from biotech to government to manufacturing to healthcare to whatever. It's really focused on leaders who are trying to move their organization from more of this command and control, leaders have all the answers, sort of traditional management approach to much more of empowered problem solving at all levels. And so some people, and in some ways, it is lean, but it could be more broad than that. So it fits with people who are trying to do a lean transformation in their organization or just trying to develop more engagement of problem solving and capability and alignment across the organization, but really from this people-centered learning perspective. And so my ideal clients or the people I tend to work with are those internal change leaders. So people who are either in an executive role, sort of leading this vision for change in their organizations, most often like the COO or a senior vice president, and or like the director or vice president of operational excellence, continuous improvement, who's responsible for the transformation, or the chief transformation officer in an organization. So it's all in service of people leading change from this sort of old way of management to this more empowered learning way of management, and trying to connect the dots. And really where they've often missed is they focus on like sort of the technical problem solving. So they've done a lot of the tools and the processes and seen some impact, of course, of eliminating waste and improving process, but something's not sticking. And so the element that I bring that's often been missing is that real people-centered side. And so I help them infuse that real deep understanding that you have to focus on the people first and marry that with the process improvement and the technical tools to really create a sustainable system in which people are thriving and actually functioning. And so getting out of them being like the doers of the projects to the enablers of the organization and the people within the organization doing it.
It's so interesting. So what you do is actually very similar to like one of the CEOs of a company is called WD-40 that I interviewed just a couple of weeks ago. His focus is also on like that internal change and like people first kind of leadership. His name's Gary Ridge, and I had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it was like a similar focus as yours as well. And so how is it like to work with you? In our podcast, we do have two types of audiences. One of them is coaches who are trying to learn, getting informed of what other coaches are doing. The other group is the audiences of coaches we've had on the show before. So we've borrowed some of their audience, and we might be reaching out to an audience that you could be working with. For them, how would you describe what's it like to work with you? Is there like a program? Do they go through some sort of a program length, one-on-one coaching? What is that like?
So all of my engagements are partnerships that are developed based on the needs of the leader and their organization. So I have different programs and modules and learning experiences that I can pull from, but it's really about first understanding what is the transformation and the gaps that they're seeing in their organization, and then we'll create the roadmap to get there. So there's no one size fits all. I certainly do have like my trusted advisor program, which starts off at 6 months, which is where we can really be collaborative behind the scenes and helping leaders get really clear on what is the change they're trying to lead, and then be both their tactical and their strategic advisor for them to have. A lot of leaders don't have that safe space to really just think through ideas and get some external expertise and some coaching. So that would be sort of the most sort of program like offer that I have. The rest is really identifying what they need, and then I customize how I show up based on what's going to help them get from here to there. And sometimes, what I think it's really helpful, and this would be for both audiences that are listening here, is that a client will come forward with what they think is the answer or the methodology or the thing that's going to solve their problem. But it may be like, oh, we need training for something, or, my team needs to go through some sort of coaching. But if we don't identify first, what are the gaps? What's happening in the business? How are those behaviors that you're not seeing impacting what the results that you're getting? So we spend a lot of time up front really identifying that, because then we can understand, well, what's the right intervention to help? Like, where do you need to go? Where are you today? And then what's the right intervention to get from here to there? Is a workshop really the right thing? Or is it more of an immersive experience? Or, what is the thing that they need? And so I love that as a framing, because we were so used to saying, oh, we just need to do this thing. But it's first, what problem are you trying to solve? And then what impact is that going to have?
Yeah, and getting clarity on what that is
Yeah.
before, because oftentimes you might even think like, I guess this probably from experience, you might think that the problem is something and then something else ends
Yeah.
up being the real problem.
Right. Or they could say, oh, we really need a workshop on just how to have difficult conversations. And you could say, your answer could say, yeah, sure, I can do that. That's in my wheelhouse. Sure, let's talk about the number of people. But is that really the problem they need to solve? So backpedaling first to say, that's great. Let's explore that. But first, tell me what's going on in the business. What are you seeing? Where are difficult conversations showing up? What's not happening, or what's happening as a result? You may uncover that like something nuanced about what's really happening. And then that might structure the intervention in a very different way, both in terms of content and then what is the coaching or consulting support that they need to go there. So that's a big shift in perspective to have as well as a coach or a consultant, about how you're positioning and helping your clients really understand what problem they really need to solve.
Yeah, yeah, and it's beautiful they
Yep.
get to do that with you
Yep.
before they're working. So, now another question that I'm trying to get as much data as I can on is when it comes to marketing for coaches. In your case, from your experience and perspective, what have you seen in terms of marketing work really well for you? Is there a certain marketing channel that you see working really well?
I am all about the inbound. So like, how do you put out your perspective and then attract people to your ideas that way? I don't run ads. I don't do anything like that. Now, I found the best channels are by sharing thoughts, and LinkedIn has been a very powerful enabler for me. Certainly growing my email list. So, I talked about how 10 years ago, I was writing a blog. And so I attracted a following both on what was then Twitter and on LinkedIn, and then have my own email list. And that's grown. So that's been really important too, where I have ongoing conversations with people who have opted in to following me. And then certainly my podcast as well is a great way to connect with people. So as podcasts are a lot of time, energy, and money. At the same time, I see it as a gift out there to share thoughts, to connect with people, and to do it from a genuine perspective. And at the same time, people get to know you and your perspective in ways that they can work with you as well. And so I found that the last 2 years, the podcast has certainly been a way for me to connect with a broader audience. And then just constantly posting on LinkedIn, but in a way that's not selling, but it's offering ideas, insights, inspiration from either articles, podcasts, whatever it is. And then occasionally making offers visible, especially my Japan leadership experience when enrollment opens. I let people know about that. But those would be the best channels that I've found. But it all has been residing on LinkedIn, growing my own list, and now my podcast as well. And of course, writing a book that people have read and has performed really well has helped increase my visibility. But I don't see that necessarily as marketing. That's just been something that's raised my profile and awareness.
And just for everyone to know more about the book, what was it called again? Is it
It's called Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, Lessons from Toyota leader Isao Yoshino on a Lifetime of Continuous Learning. It just recently, 2 years ago, won the Shingo Publication Award and many others. Yeah, Larry Culp, the CEO of GE, endorsed it and recommended it to everyone in his company and so much more. So it's been a real honor and privilege to have written that book and to share these incredible lessons that I personally learned so much from with the world. It's been translated to 8 languages now too, so that's super fun. And then that's allowed me to speak with more audiences, going to different countries to share the messages of the book.
And so people, if they wanted to find that, they can find that on Amazon too, right?
Yep, it's on Amazon. It's also audiobook, which you can hear me read, and then in many different languages. But Amazon's the greatest place to get it, easiest place to get it. Yeah.
It's beautiful that they can hear you read, because oftentimes with audiobooks, you don't get the author's voice.
Right. I made an intentional choice that how personal this book was. It was me and Mr. Yoshino over years of conversation and writing it, and I wanted to have that, again, that personal connection with the reader, the listener, and to learn more about me. And so it made sense to have me do the reading, to have that personal connection. In the same way we're here having a personal conversation.
Yeah.
That was the purpose. Yeah.
This builds such a strong connection with the people who are going to listen, because when you think about it, in a world that is so much AI out there, when it comes to like the amount of posts that are being written by AI,
Yeah.
even if you were to go like and read someone's posts that you trust, you still might not know for sure if this is the voice that they're speaking with in normal life. And in the podcast, it's not possible to fake that. This is your actual voice, and this connection that they build on the podcast is so strong. So yeah, I really like this type of setup, and I encourage more coaches to be on podcasts.
Yes.
Either have their own or like be guests on
Right.
other podcasts. Yeah.
And that's where I started. I started off as being a guest on many people for years, being a guest, and then I started off a very low entry point type of podcast many years ago. Just started doing conversations with authors in my space and putting it up on my YouTube channel, and then it just evolved. And people said, "Oh, I'd like to hear the audio." I'm like, "Oh, I can put the audio up too," but on a very light touch editing. It was 2 years ago when I launched Chain of Learning. I did it with greater intention, and I knew I wanted high class audio editing and so much more. I like up leveled my approach, but don't let that be, for listeners, don't let that be a barrier to you getting out there and creating content and sharing your ideas. Like there are so many different ways that you can do it in a way that's authentic and meaningful, and all you need is a good mic, and there's so much great editing software out there as well. So there are many different fits for purpose, right?
Absolutely. And so I also want to talk to you about the future of your business as well. So if we're looking to the next 1 to 3 years, do you have any specific business goals or goals in general that you're working towards?
Yeah. So it's, always growing and have a new project. I wrote the book and spent so much energy on that. And I wouldn't recommend necessarily launching a book in the middle of a pandemic, but it actually ended up being good because people were home and wanting to read. And then launched my podcast and got that. Now I'm in a good rhythm. I have over 50 episodes out 2 years ago. And so I'm working on another book, but it's going to be more of a practical book based on the social and influence skills that I really see are needed to lead transformational change, to create these cultures of learning that are people-centered, that keep coming up in conversations and my experience in coaching and working with teams around the world, and that I've called Catalyst with a K-A-T-A-L-Y-S-T. And so I'm building that out into something that people, more than just a worksheet and a podcast, but more with some more content around that. That'd be one goal, is to ideally get that out in 2026, but people can go and learn more on my website about that. In the meantime, I have some resources there. And, I love what I'm doing right now. So I don't think we always have to be hugely growing. I have been leading these executive learning trips now every 6 months since the world opened back up again. I would love to continue to do that. Mr. Yoshino's 81. And so we get so much joy in collaborating, and who knows how long that will be able to last. And it's been fantastic. So where I'd really like to see is get this next resource book, whatever I don't know totally what it's going to look like, out, and continue to just grow my impact, but not in a hugely accelerated way. And I definitely have another sort of bigger idea brewing. So it's like giving that space also for those ideas to happen, and to space to write more. So it's not necessarily a financial goal. I feel like I'm on a good solid trajectory. I'd love to continue the pathway I've been on, and to have space and capacity for sort of that next big idea.
Wow. And do you want to share more about the next big idea? Or you want to
Well,
keep
no,
it?
I guess it's really, I don't know what form it's going to take, but I've been really thinking about this barrier that people in this continuous improvement, operational excellence space are passionate about what they do, what I do, what we like. We sort of, the enthusiasm is there. And I actually just did a survey of change leaders. It came out on my podcast just this week that we're recording this Chain of Learning episode 52, about why do we love this work? And it's so consistent. We love solving problems. We love helping empower people to solve problems. We like meaningful impact. And now we're really frustrated that we're not getting the senior leaders on board, that there's not enough time, that there's we're just sort of beating our hands into the, pushing the boulder up the hill, or beating our hands on a door, and it's not opening. And so what's holding what's holding us back from that change? So one, I think some of it's the influence skills around this catalyst model. So that's why I'm passionate about that. But the bigger idea is really like, what's holding organizationally back? We have some structures that seem to inhibit people in leaders, even if they know they want to have this people-centered culture and like do good in the world, somehow in the system get caught up with short-term thinking, pressures, revert to being the more command and control leader with all the answers, even though that's not necessarily their intention. And so I'm intrigued on this on a broader like system level rather than just like an individual level. So I don't have the answer to that, but it's something I've been thinking a lot about. You see this word behind me you were asking before we recorded. There's a word written in Japanese. It's shiko, which means intention in Japanese. And it comes from two symbols or three symbols actually, but the top one has it's actually a standalone word, kokorozashi, the strength of your spirit, your purpose as a leader. And the lower one means direction. Are you orienting yourself in that direction? Intention equals heart plus direction. And so from an individual side, it's like helping leaders reconnect with that purpose and then see, how are your actions aligned or not aligned with that? All these individual leaders have a great intention, but somehow collectively the behaviors are not aligning and somehow the incentives in our organizations are inhibiting that to really thrive and flourish in many places. So what is that and how can we overcome it? So I don't have the answer to that, but that's the big idea that I've been pondering lately.
I really like that. So it's something like within the next maybe 3 years, 5 years, something.
I would imagine there'll be something. I don't know if it's a book or if it's, what vehicle for the thought will come through, but you're going to hear me talking a lot about that. And I'll be using my podcast as a way to explore that as well. Yeah. So go tune into Chain of Learning if you're interested in exploring that with me.
What have been some investments you've done in the recent years that you feel really good about? Either you learned a lot or get a good return from? And these could be investments of time or money or both. And what have been some investments that you would have preferred to have avoided if there's bad investments as well?
So first, I'll talk about the big mindset shift that I had to make as my consulting coaching practice grew from me being an independent consultant to really now being an author. And I have a lot of different things that I'm doing and different streams of work. I was doing it all. And I realized I couldn't be doing it all if I didn't have support within the business. So 100% the best investments that I have made has been hiring, they're all contractors, but a team of people who support me in my business. So I'm still a solopreneur in the sense that I'm not growing a team to deliver my content. I'm still the only client the client facing person, but I have many team members support me, from a business director who serves in a lot of different functions, like, administrative manager. I have someone who helps build my website. I mean, I used to do that myself too. I have a business coach for myself to help me continue to up level and think. I have, a podcast editor and a media manager. So I used to do all those things, but there was no way for me to do all those things if I wanted to grow in me doing the content development and the client work. And so the best investment is continued to see that for me to have greater impact and thus bring in more revenue, I also needed to invest in hiring and paying people to support me in my business. So hands down, if you're wanting to grow your practice, it doesn't have to be that you are necessarily hiring a team to do the delivery work, but the more you can hire people to help you take things off your plate so that you can really focus on those big items, that it's been transformational in my business. And I love working with people. The other investment was choosing to publish my book myself. And so there was a lot of upfront investment. And I had some offers from smaller traditional publishers, but I was going to have to give away a lot of control for that. And I decided I'd already spent years in working and writing this book that I was going to invest the money to create my own publishing platform. So I hired a team all the editors, all the people, the layout, the designer, the PR, and we put together the book and launched it I have my own press now, and we use Amazon and Ingram Spark is the publishing platform. But I didn't want it to be a quote unquote self-published book, but I had all the team who did that. So I had a big upfront financial investment in that. And it's reaped benefits. I love that I have all the control, and I still have team members that do the work to update the book and all of the things. But having all that control was really powerful. And I've been relentless about marketing it over 5 years, and it's done very well. And so it's paid for itself. And so that was a really great investment. But it wasn't about that investment in writing the book wasn't about necessarily the return on dollar for making money on the book. It was about investing in growing my thought leadership, putting something out there. And through that, I have been able to then get higher paid clients because I've grown in reputation and grown in experience. And so those have been the two most powerful investments. And now with the podcast too, like a podcast, as you know, a lot of time, and there's money you pay people to do, unless you're doing it yourself, do the editing and do all of that. And people don't pay for a podcast, but I believe it's one of the most powerful marketing and human connection vehicles that we can have. And it also keeps me real and honest with having to keep thinking and developing more content. Not just to put out content, but to actually synthesize ideas and share them in an imperfect way and get resonance with people, and it helps me develop. I guess those things. So hiring people to support you, and then choosing some ways to invest in growing your thought leadership, whether that's a book or a podcast or some other ways. So to answer your other question, what are some things that I have learned along the way that have not been good investments? I think the avoidance. I should have hired people sooner to help support my business because I started to go a little like I was getting so stressed. And I was in a coaching group program with women coaches around the world. And the woman heading up the group, she's like, wait, you don't have anyone helping you? And I'm like, no, I do it all. She's like, that's crazy. So don't wait on that one because you'll see how it frees up your capacity to really be much more creative and impactful. But I made the investment in recording my audiobook the first time, and I had to redo it because we recorded it in this room here, and my podcast editor, my audiobook editor didn't want to disappoint me, even though we had all the right equipment, but somehow I had not hit the right mic on a few of the chapters. So it was recording from my my computer audio, which would have been fine for if it's like a 30-minute podcast. You're fine with the audio quality not being as good. But the problem was she didn't tell me. She didn't tell me that. And I didn't listen to the whole 8-hour audiobook. And there were some big gaps with not so good audio. It passed Audible's quality control, but it wasn't the listening experience I wanted my listeners to have. And so I had to then do a redo, and I found an audio studio and I went in, and so there was a gap, and I'd already done all the marketing with the audio book had been pushed out already, and there was no way to change that. So there was a 6-week gap in getting the new one out. So the lesson there is, I was in the middle of the pandemic, so I'll give myself a little bit of grace there. Finding an audio studio was a little harder back in the end of 2020 than it would have been to present day. Not to skimp on things and their importance. The money invested to go to an audio studio to do that from the beginning would have been a wiser choice. And again, I'll put that back in pandemic times. I didn't have childcare, and it was hard to find a studio back in those days. But to not be penny wise, pound foolish, as you say. So think of the big picture and the outcome, because you might have to redo things or pay double or there's negative impact that's unanticipated. So I learned a lot from that. And I had some good conversations about what it means to be clear on your main goals. I cared less about the timeline and more about the quality. But those are good leadership lessons. So as long as we can always have a learning mindset, we can learn from the challenges and mistakes as well.
I totally agree with you. And one thing we like to say here is trust but verify.
Yes.
Because when it comes to these big investments, before marketing, potentially listening to it because you put so much work to it.
So the second time, my business manager actually did listen to the whole thing, on hyperspeed, but she could hear the yes. So, you just learn, and sometimes you're just overwhelmed, and that's okay. And and it's okay to be human and to make mistakes, right? And so, and I think even as business owners, as coaches, that's part of the human experience too. And so also talking about mistakes, and I have a big mistake I can talk about. I have many big mistakes I can talk about, but being people like that, it humanizes us as well.
Absolutely. And that's how we learn as humans. So it's very normal. The other thing is when it comes to listening to yourself, it's usually not enjoyable.
Well, right. So I was really reluctant to I'm like, one, I've already written this book and I've seen every word a gazillion times. And so then to like read it, you're like, and I'm like, then I don't want to listen to it. And so yeah, it definitely, although I've gotten better. Like I don't listen to all my podcasts afterwards because I really trust my audio editor, but I do find it interesting to go back. I do make myself go back and listen sometimes just because I want to hear how am I sounding on delivery, because I want to continuously improve myself as well. And sometimes I love going back to when you're saying things, you don't always even realize what you're fully saying yourself, or like the conversation. I'd love to listen to this again. Like, wow, what are the things that we talked about? Because your brain remembers things in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I hate hearing myself. I've gotten better at it.
Me too. I almost don't, unless like I'm trying to give myself some feedback. I usually try to not listen to these episodes or even look at the episodes.
Yeah.
Because I find it cringe to listen to myself.
I know.
So now, when thinking about your business, where would you say, and thinking about the goals as well, you're kind of like more in working in your book or resource right now. What would you say is a challenge for you right now?
Goals. So impact. Sometimes my biggest bottleneck is my own sort of potential for putting pressure on myself that something has to be in a certain way. Job wired.
You hold your work to a high standards.
For sure.
So my final question to you is, and this is going to be kind of like an advice for other coaches or an advice you give to yourself. So for coaches who want to scale their impact, and in a way you're also scaling your impact with your book and with the other resources going to come up soon or whatever comes up in the future, you're driven by impact. So for coaches who want to scale their impact, is there any advice you'd like to give to these coaches?
Yeah, well, one is just put yourself out there. So the best way to scale your impact is not to just start having impact and not worrying about what the impact of that is, right? And so whether it's posting on LinkedIn or starting a podcast or being a guest on other people's podcasts, it's about putting your perspective out there and connecting with others and engaging, and that your impact will grow. And that's really what I mean by this chain of learning. It's like individual links are not, how good are they if they're just alone? So it's making the connections with other people in a variety of different ways. And through that, you will scale your impact. Your reputation will grow. Business will come to you. And if you keep doing that, that will have a positive ripple effect in your business as well. So impact will translate into the work as well. And so I think sometimes we get worried about, I got to sell something and I got to push this. And it's actually, no, if we offer things forward, I feel like it's a virtuous cycle. The rest does and will come, but it's not always a direct linear way. But make that impact by creating the connections, putting thoughts out there and helping others.
And is that law of reciprocity where if you give something, people will feel like they have to give something back to you too?
Right. And people know that you're like, and be authentic to yourself, right? But people want to work with people who are helpful and genuine, and that comes across. And so put things out there. Don't be worried about being perfect. Just share something from a genuine place of curiosity or interest.
Yeah. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Yeah, Rexhen, it's been great.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go into LinkedIn, look up Katie, Brian Jones Anderson. They'll be able to find your profile. They can also go into kbj@anderson.com. We'll put that in the description.
Yep.
Is there any other way?
Well, those are the two best ways. Of course, Chain of Learning, my podcast, you can, every 2 weeks, a new episode drops. And, but yeah, please connect on LinkedIn. KBJ Anderson is both my handle there as well as my website. And, and also have a YouTube channel. So you can see a lot more videos and tips there. But I look forward to connecting. And I'd love to hear, for anyone listening here, what's one takeaway you've had or something that resonated with you, either about growing your consulting or coaching practice, or just more broadly about how do we help create meaningful impact in this world?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katie.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.